Hi, this is Gladsley Miller, and you're listening to the Learn, Apply, Repeat podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Learn, Apply, Repeat podcast. Today, I'm going to start a new series which I call Walking with Giants, where I'll be interviewing some guests that they actually had a really great impact in my professional life, and some of them are still my friends up to this day, and some of them they have no clue how much impact they had in my life because they've never met me. And to start this new series, I invited a friend and a past boss, Imre Nagy. He is head of engineering in a company in UK, but he's also a YouTuber, and he has a really interesting background, and he's one of the most pragmatic and best problem solvers that I've met in my life. Without further ado, let's get started. Imi, thank you so much for joining me in this first episode as my first guest of the series that I call Walking with Giants, which are all the great minds that made me get to where I am. So yeah, I know. Yeah, and we are not gonna cut you laughing like that, but it's serious. I told you before, and I'm telling you to everyone now. So thank you so much for joining. I wanted to start asking you about your YouTube channel because you have a lot of things going on. But before that, I saw your red watch and I want to know more about it.
Sure, in a second. So first of all, thank you very much for having me on your podcast, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here. So the watch, actually, it is orange, but this watch is from a sort of loot box, a curiosity box. I don't know if you know about it. It was done by a guy called Michael. He's running the YouTube channel Resource, or in a way was running. I mean, he spends more time on something else now. But anyway, so this is from one of their boxes. I don't know which one of them, so I can't tell you that. The trick of this watch is it's going backwards. Right, so instead of being the normal circle, it's going the other way around. I don't know if I can show this to you there.
Yes.
Hopefully you can see the numbers and everything is on the other way around.
But what made you get a watch that goes backwards?
Well, I did not pick it. It came as a random gift in the box. But what makes me wear it is it makes me think a bit, and it helps me remembering one of the key principles of actually I'm trying to follow all my life, to think outside of the box. So when I look at this watch, I can obviously see the time. It doesn't make it more difficult really, but it still gives a bit of a pause in there for me. And what I'm trying to say with this is I'm trying to, I'm a software engineer myself as well, and also trying to do quite a lot of things, and trying to think outside of the box, or look in a different angle, or from a different angle of a problem. I think I mentioned this to you before, but I read a book about, when I was younger, about inventions and inventors. And more than once it happened that when they faced a problem, the solution was to flip the previous solution on its head. One simple example of that is trains and tracks and wheels of trains. So the original design for tracks were L-shaped, which meant that it keeps the wheels in the right place, so you can go and turn and everything with that, and then it's perfect, it works, and awesome, except if there is a damage to the track, because that means that the rails there will derail. But because of the rails, I mean, the tracks are designed to keep the wheels in place. If you break it, then every train will derail at that point. So you have to get out and fix the tracks, and then it will stop everything. So one of the engineers thought about this and then flipped the idea on its head. So rather than the guards being part of the track, the guards became part of the wheels. So that meant that if there is a damage to the guard or the wheel, then only one train and one wheel will derail or have a problem with it. which means that, most of the times your train will carry on anyway. It will be a bit of a noise, it will be difficult, but it doesn't cause the whole traffic to stop on that track. And it's much easier and faster to fix that kind of thing. So it helped. And then they followed that, and then, we still use that today. And I'm trying to apply that when, I face a problem and look at it for a long time. And then, just like this watch, I can, step outside and think about it. What if it turn around or look around in a different angle? And that's why I like this watch.
And I liked the color at first, and then when you told me it was going backwards, I'm like, wait, what? No, thank you so much. So I wanted to go back into the YouTube channel that you created for several reasons. One of them, as I said, that when you created that channel, it inspired me into getting into my own podcast. And that's why I wanted to go a bit deeper into that conversation. What made you create that channel, and what is the channel about? Because I know what it's about. I can see things in the background in there.
Right.
Nobody else here probably knows.
Yes. Okay. So the channel is about, like many others, is about retro computers and retro stuff rather than just retro computers. I mean, there are a few in the back, a Commodore 116 and a modern retro Spectrum next there, but there is about 100 other computers in this room. So it's quite a lot. I don't know exactly what was the tipping point for me to start doing a channel, although I think I did record one video very early on which tries to explain it. But if I try to summarize it, I love and I have a passion for computers from a very early age. I mean, I think I was 5 years old when I've seen my first computer, not mine, a computer. I was still in nursery or just about left nursery, and then we've been shown to a Commodore PET, I think it was, and it was fascinating, right? That thing can do something outside of just being, me watching it. It's interactive. We played spacing with it, well, the clone of it. And from that moment on, I wanted to work with these things, and I love these things. And when I came to the UK and established a life, I returned to that passion and started to collect computers in various conditions. Things working, not working, and then needing restoration. And I just wanted to record these things mainly for myself. When I will be old and won't remember stuff, then I can just like, oh, look, that I did that. And I thought that, what, if I spend a bit of a time on it, and then maybe I can share it with others, and then maybe some other people will find interest in them. I mean, obviously no denying and no hiding that retro computing is, or was a few years ago, actually, high, and then quite a lot of people went into it and started doing it. So some would say that, I just followed the trend, but maybe true, I don't know. But I wanted to do recordings for myself, and then I thought that, if I share it, some people maybe might find some enjoyment there too, or criticizing me, of which I can learn and then get better if the criticism isn't just about, you're rubbish. Tell me how rubbish I am, and then I can fix that.
In talking about criticism, the first thing that came to my mind was, I have some friends that they say, you never read the comments. Whenever you go into a video, you never read the comments. Do you have any really bad comments in any of your videos?
Really bad, I don't think. I mean, that's maybe down to I'm not really having that much of an exposure just yet. I mean, the registered, the subscribers is just about 3,400. So it isn't huge, right? It's not like I've got millions of people joining or that are being there on my channel. I've got one video which went out in a very awful audio quality. One channel was completely off, and I didn't notice it even after rewatching it at first. And so quite a lot of people tell me that I should spend more time and more attention to the quality of those videos, which are true. But none of them were really bad. So more constructive, actually, if anything.
Oh, yeah. In that sense, I remember back in early 2000s, your first computer you got, I remember you mentioned that you were about 5 years old when you saw your first computer. When was the first computer that you got?
Uh, I think 11 or 12 years old. It was a Commodore 16.
Okay. So my point was that my first computer when I was in university, and it
Mm,
was 2001.
okay.
So so for you to know. And around that time, like a couple of years later, I started to dig into Flash. And the way that I tried to learn it was by recording. So at that time, I was already like following some people. Tutorials weren't that great. YouTube was basically starting in Brazil. So all the content I had to read or read, no, watch was in English. And then I decided, well, I'm gonna teach Flash. And I remember those microphones that were plastic. They had a disc like that. It came like a pencil in your face. And I was recording in the middle of the night with my roommates nearby. So I was talking really close to the microphone. So the audio was terrible. And as you can imagine, I remember publishing, I think it was called Teacher Tube. It was something about it was a
Mm.
YouTube for teachers. And one guy just destroyed me. I created a blog and I put it in the blog. He's just like, "Oh my God, man, your audio is so terrible." So it reminded me when you said about your own audio. But out of creating your YouTube channel, what have you learned so far from the first video to the latest video that you had?
There's no point rushing it. I think that's the one of the biggest lesson I learned because it shows, right? It makes more sense to spend a bit of a time polishing and planning, which is quite interesting because I thought myself that with computers you don't really have that luxury to plan too much ahead because I mean if you open it up, there's always a surprise in that, and then something will be unexpected, and then you will end up not knowing what is next. But it doesn't help, or it doesn't affect really that how do you prepare for your video, and then how you work on that content you are about to publish. And it shows that some of the videos I put together early on, and well, it's not much necessary. I mean, not necessarily early on. Some of them are showing the sign of, oh, just let's do it, let me put it together, and then let me just publish it. And it's not nice, right? I mean, it's not nice me to tell people that my videos are rubbish, but there's a lot to learn still. And I think that's the general thing with other YouTubers as well. There are some who are awesome from day one, but I think most of them do take time to get better and find their own style and own ways of doing it. And I'm still in the process of that. I think that's what I learned, that it's not happening like this.
Mm-hmm. Just for context, because not everyone will know what you do in your videos, but I've seen you fixing really old computers, getting a Mac, and it's like opening up the old Mac, and then like there's hair inside. There is, I don't know, Coca-Cola in the keyboard.
Yes.
And I recall the one that you also got a Game Boy as well, and you started to up the screen as well. So these, I didn't feel like you were rushing. I hopefully though maybe I didn't watch the ones you rushed. Although I think I watched every single one of them. I didn't feel like that. I think to your point that you say like, oh, my videos are rubbish. I do believe that we are super hard on ourselves, way more than people who are saying. And this is one of the things that I try to teach especially when you're giving a speech or you're trying to teach something. Most of the people, they don't know. And if you make a mistake, you keep going because they don't know it was a mistake. You know because you planned something. And in that sense, what I would say is that for you, it may be rubbish. I didn't even notice the one with the audio until you said it. right? Yeah, and for context as well, we are friends and we exchange messages all the time. So I didn't. If you hadn't told me about the audio, I wouldn't bother too much. Now I pay attention. It's like after you said it, I have to pay attention to it. And I'm trying my best not to do the same mistake and learn from you. And hopefully this one, the audio will be good because I'm not recording an extra audio here.
Okay, well, let's hope it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But you're right. Actually, we tend to be over. I mean, lots of people, and no, maybe all people have this tendency of being much harder on ourselves and with ourselves, right? Than with others, because we think ourselves up slightly higher, or I mean, quite a lot of people do it. That we are the best, or the cream de la cream, and then therefore any mistake we make is much bigger. But I think we do, in a sense, reflect that onto our very close surroundings as well.
One thing that I also want to ask about, like when you said that you are hard on yourself, I know that you're not doing only the YouTube channel, right? You, as you said, you are a software engineer, and we met. You were actually my boss, weirdly enough, and I don't know many people that they actually become friends with their bosses, but you were one of my bosses in the past when I lived in UK, and I'm glad that we became friends. But I wanted to go down because for me, you are a great mentor forward slash coach. You help me a lot in my professional life, in my private life as well.
Thank you.
And when we are talking about being harsh on ourselves, I wanted to ask more about your, let's call it, day job, and how you're handling the teams that you're currently working, and how do you apply these coaching techniques to make them grow.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm not doing much software engineering myself in the last couple of years. I mean, when we worked together, I was still actively doing coding development myself. But I think after that company, I think it's quite true. After that company, I went to full management, and I dropped coding from my day-to-day job. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't do some lapses. And actually, I think we worked together in the past again after the initial company as well. And then, I did coding when it was needed, but I transitioned to management. So my current job title is head of software engineering, just for context.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm head of software engineering right now, and I do have a few teams working with me. Now, importantly, I don't really sit down with people or with teams that, oh, I'm gonna teach you and I'm gonna mentor you and I'm gonna do the coaching with you. So I never really seen myself as a dedicated coach or mentor. What I'm trying to do, and I think this is what I'm trying to do with all my life, and then this includes my children too, that I do try to let people experience both failure and success. I'm trying to give nudges to, if this is what you're trying to do and trying to achieve, then this might be an alternative solution to that. Or if you want to go down that route, these are the things I can foresee because I experienced. But I never stopped anyone. I mean, apart from committing, serious crimes and then and crashing production servers. So that don't go that direction. But I want people to have the experience in a sort of controlled environment where they can try themselves and they can figure out their own limits, and then we can work on the experience they have to grow from there and get to the next level from there. Using a very silly example, when my son one day said to me 15 years ago that he wants to run down on a hill, I said that cool, you can do that if you want to do that. It's safe enough. I did have a look, but there's a good chance that you're going to fall and you're going to hit yourself, and then this will happen. And then he said fine, and then he did run, he did fall, he did hit himself, and it helped him to recognize that if somebody says something, a parent or an adult says something, then it makes sense to sometimes trust it, and because they had the experience that you try yourself, you did hit yourself, it's going to be okay, there's nothing serious, right? He did not end up in a hospital, unlike me when my father hit me with a car. But the story there is that, the next time when he asked that if I think it's safe for him to do something, and then he was able to judge his own skills after that much better. And I think that's what he helped him to be a bit more, self-confident, because he understood his limits. And again, in a controlled environment, so he did not break any legs or any bones, but he had enough of a hit to do that. And then I think that works with the professional side as well. That fine, try that, and we'll see where you get that one. And the very important thing is there is no "well, I told you so," right? And there is no betraying their trust or betraying their, innocence, in a sense that, try it, and then I will be here to help you out and pick you up, and then we can move together on from that point on. And there is nothing there. And I think that's important. You never do and never go down the route of patronizing people or telling them that, well, I told you so, next time you should listen to me. I think you're killing your reputation with anything like that. You have to give people the benefit, and then you have to give them to the option to try. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with the people I'm working with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does it answer your question?
Why do you do this way? Why do you do this way? Did people, when you were learning, did your bosses, mentors, coaches, anyone that was influencing you, they did this way with you, or it's something that you figure out by yourself?
I think with, like many other people, this is from trying to do the opposite what my parents did. My parents were very strict. I mean, to an extreme degree, and then I never felt that that's the right answer. But contrary to, a normal reaction, I don't think the opposite is the right answer. That, you do whatever, I don't care, right? So, and I felt that the answer probably is in the middle ground. And I don't know, it was an instinct. And I did have a boss or a company where I worked for, and then that was very, 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 again, strict. And people felt uncomfortable. They did not enjoy working there, right? And then, in a sense, they were bringing their body into the company in the morning, and then they left their soul out. And then it just did not feel, right. It didn't feel natural. It felt like something out of a horror movie where, I'm not going to say zombies working in a place, but it really felt like that, everybody dropped their individuality, and it's like just following the whatever. And I didn't feel happy or comfortable with that. So that was two examples, I think, on the wrong side. And I thought that there must be something which helps people and helps me. So the principle I'm trying to follow in my management role, that I want to be the manager that I wanted for myself when I worked on the other side of the table. So that's what I'm trying to do. And then so far it works, I think. People don't leave me, don't abandon me. In fact, we became friends, right? And then we having this conversation after how many years we worked together? 8?
About that. And for years we worked together.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned that it rang a bell, and I had some other people that I worked with, and they kind of like did exactly the same thing. They don't even mention when I'm doing something wrong. They let me make the mistakes. And when I've learned, they said, yeah, I noticed that back then, but I wanted you to figure out by yourself. So the lesson, usually it's way bigger than just like, follow what I'm saying. You're doing it wrong. And I had experiences, in work experiences, where someone was telling me, you have to do it this way. It was their way and not my way. And they asked, like, why did you do it this way? And then I explained. Even like when I was coding, it's like, why did you do it this way? And then I explained everything. And the manager got upset because it's like, you always have an answer for everything. You ask it why I did this way. I spent some time explaining on GitHub. Like, so we have a conversation and you get upset because I gave you an answer for a question that you asked me. But that person, unfortunately, it was the first time that person was a manager. And I feel you. It's like, and maybe that's why I'm not too close to that person anymore
Mm.
compared to you, because I feel like this approach that you have it, and I'm pretty sure whoever is working with you nowadays can feel it. It's like it promotes growth, and it's not like follow what I'm saying. That's it. You don't need the brain. Just do my solution, and that's what it is.
No. And also, I wanted to say that, I said it to you like this way, but I'm not really just like yourself. I'm not really telling people that what you're trying to do is wrong, but go ahead anyway, because that's tainting it, right? I mean, unless it's really very wrong, right? I mean, again, we can say this. If you want to crash production on
Yeah.
the environment, then I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't do that, right? And then that's going to be a problem. But normally I'm not. So I'm like, all right, let's try it. Let's give it a go. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my assumptions are wrong, right? So in every single scenario, I'm learning myself, either, getting a confirmation that my instinct was right, or I'm getting the slap on my wrist that, no, 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 that was wrong. See, it worked. So I think we have to be, there are two things here, very important, I think. One is, both of them are related to our profession, and in broader sense, that and software development, IT, that the industry around us moves fast. We always have to be, I mean, we have to be able to learn almost every day. New frameworks come out, new solutions are figured out, new ways of working being introduced. And if you don't adapt, you don't learn, and you don't pick up skills, then you're going to be left behind, and then it's end of your career. You end up somewhere else. So we have to keep that mentality to learn and then observe and absorb things. So that's number one. The second thing is, I keep saying this to quite a lot of people when we talk about productivity or anything like that. And some people question me why I say to people that, if you don't feel like it, don't do it. Go away, have a rest. If you have some problems in your head, you're preoccupied with something, then just go. Don't worry about work. And I've got a manager back then and asked me why you say this to your people. It's like, you encouraging them to not to work. I said, I'm not. But there is no benefit for anyone to sit in front of a computer and stare at the screen at the same two lines of code by pretending to work, right? Go away, solve your whatever you have to solve or think about, and then come back and you will be more productive. It is beneficial for the business to have a productive developer or engineer, or productive anyone really in the business. But side note to that, there are not many professions on the planet where this you can do, right? This is no negative comment about anyone, but for example, if you are a neurosurgeon and you get into a process and you are working on someone's brain, you can't just, well, I'm going to close it up and I will give it back tomorrow and think about this more tomorrow, right? So there are some professions where this doesn't work. If you are working in a conveyor belt, you can't stop and then I don't feel like it today, and then bring it to my home and then I will do this screwing tomorrow. So whatever. In our industry, it works, and then we can do it. And I think it would be foolish not to embrace it and use it to full potential. That it doesn't really matter if you do your code in the first hour of your day or the last hour of the day. It works, you deliver something, it's fantastic. And I think that's, if you accept that our profession is special, then managing it is also much easier, in my view. Maybe this was, again, too much.
I'll be honest, when you were talking about that, it reminded me of something that I did some years ago. I had to travel with my kids to sort out the visa when I was going to move. And I was working with a new client. And because I had just started, it felt wrong for me not to work for a couple of days because I had to travel, like, I don't know, 16, 20 hours. And so I had to divide the trip in 2 days. And I didn't take time off. And I had to squeeze time when I was with my young kids, staying in an Airbnb and trying to fix some code. And I remember I was trying to cut some time and I didn't test a piece of code. And that was terrible. And that kind of like it kind of tainted my own quality of work, and it was even like some relationships didn't recover out of that. And now that you said like, oh, you should just, if you don't, it's not even like I didn't feel like it. It's like my mind was somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Like getting the visa to move to another country is something for me. It's like it's really stressful. And at that time, I didn't have the mindset to be writing code. And when I did that, I apologized. I said, look, I should have taken this day off, and I'm gonna take the rest of the day off and tomorrow. And then the guy that was helping me out, he said, like, yeah, you could have told me that before. So this was something that when you say that, I remember you telling this to other people in front of me, and I'm like, the first time I've heard him, I was just like your other manager, why are you saying that, right? And I felt it. And not long ago, I was working with another developer who was sick, so he decided just to cancel some meetings. And I actually wrote to him and said, look, you're sick, take the rest of the day off. Oh no, I just canceled the meeting. Like, if you cannot stay, you cannot sit in a meeting, how you're gonna sit and do code? The quality of your code won't be good. It will be worse. You'd better rest, take 1 or 2 days, and when you're back, you're back.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that that person followed the advice, because it reminded me of my bad behavior when I didn't do that. So thank you for mentioning that. This is really important, and I remember how much I've learned from that advice that now I'm even passing to other people.
Well done, job done.
And I wanted to figure out, there was one question that it was back in my mind. What made you decide to go full on management and not write code anymore?
I do have, I mean, there are two answers to that question. Number one, and this is the grandiose answer to that problem, is I always felt like that, and I think I always had the skill to oversee the big picture of whether it's being an application or actually how to run or build things from scratch to finish. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, sorry, it can be a small or a large scale project. And I always felt like that I'm limited when I was a developer, when I was only writing the code, because obviously you are only being part of a subset of the problem, right? I mean, there are things happening before you, and then things going to happen after you being involved as a developer. And I felt like that I can do more, and I can potentially drive or guide a project to success if I'm not being involved in the coding itself, but I'm helping others to coordinate, and let it be just developers or more than just developers, like, you know, UI, UX, QA, and then even some, you know, managers on the other side. And I wanted to do that, and I wanted to try that because I think I have the skill to oversee and make decisions, sensible decisions. And also now I have the background of being a developer, so I know where, you know, some of the pitfalls are, and then maybe I can avoid some of those things in before it even happens. So that's number one. The other problem I had, and then this is a problem, sorry, the previous isn't a problem. The other problem is coding and writing code for me was always a passion, a hobby, very early on. I mean, when I've got my first Commodore, I've got the bare bones, nothing came with the machine. It was just the Commodore 16. And then if you turn it on, all you get is a prompt saying ready and a blinking cursor, and then that's it. So the rest is for you now. If your parents were a bit more rich back then they would get you a disk drive or a data set or anything, and then you can load programs and then, you know, work with them. But for me, that was nothing. So all I had is a book that these are the basic commands you can give to the machine, you know, basic really. I mean, I really mean basic, the basic language. And I was sitting there like, oh, what am I going to do with this? And I started tinkering, and then I wrote my first infinite loop, obviously crashing the thing, 10 go to 10. That's all. You're never going to get out from that, not even break helps in some cases. So it was really cool. And then so I learned how to code and write the code, and then I did that. And it was a passion, a hobby, really genuinely a hobby. And I thought and I felt that when I entered into this industry as a developer myself, a dream came true, right? I'm doing it now. I'm doing what I love to do the most, and I'm getting paid for this. I can't believe people pay for this, right? I mean, I would do this for free, really, and I did it before for free. But then it kills it, right? I mean, the deadlines, the pressure, the do more, the push for more, the eventual failures in some projects are ruining the sensation of writing the code, or it did for me after 2 decades nearly. And I thought that, what, I think I should stop, because I love coding, but I don't really love coding for, how can I say this to not to be rude, for a company, for someone else, if that makes sense, right? To actually kill the joy. I didn't want to do that. And I thought that I should stop before I completely lose the passion of coding. And it helped. And I still do some coding on the side for myself, entertaining myself. I think I showed you this, rewriting old games in JavaScript, right? And then I didn't have the feeling or the desire to do anything that towards the end of my software development career, where I was writing code for money, for the business. And then it wasn't the same. So I stopped, nearly a decade spent outside of coding, and now I feel like fun again I can't wait to sit back down and work on that thing again. I think that was the second main drive.
Thank you for mentioning this. What made you transition from coding to more management? And I know for a fact that you were part of the military, and this is when you were talking about the philosophy of letting people like make their mistakes. I'm paraphrasing you here, but one thing that I was curious about, like, how did your life in the military, where you kind of need to follow the chain of command, and my assumption is you have to follow the order, right? How does that experience in the military kind of connects with this philosophy that you have, like being a bit more flexible and letting people make their mistakes?
Right. Okay. Well, there is a bit of a conflict, obviously, and then for context, that's where I lost most of my hair anyway. Happens, but it is conflicting in a way, because military is about, as you said, chain of command and following orders and then giving orders and expecting the result out of that. Now, I can say that I learned the respect of the chain of command at the military, right? Because I did. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it, that I did learn to respect and trust the management and work with the higher ups, because you have to. And also you expect the same from the people reporting to you. And if that would be the end of the story, you would say that, well, that's just not possible to merge the two things into one. But it isn't, in a way, because I've been lucky. So, you know me, I'm Hungarian, and I served in the Hungarian army. And luckily for me, is it luck? I don't know, or maybe history. So the Hungarian army is actually heavily takes cues from the Russian/Soviet army. I'm not saying the modern Hungarian army, because that's where it's going to be lucky for me. But if we jump before my time in the army, it is heavily focused on how the Soviet army is behaved, and the Russian army is working, or was working up until very recently. Not getting into politics, but we've seen it. And then it's very top driven, command driven. So you don't have individuals in the army. There was actually a saying in the army that there is no man and no women in the army. There are just soldiers in the army, and then you the one. And a joke on this one, and then me, I keep saying jokes, that there was this joke about that when you go to the military, I mean, they tend to cut your hair short. And then there was this invention that, you put your head in the machine and then it cuts your hair to the perfect level. And then there's nothing there and it's very quick. And then there's just one question about that machine that, hold on a second, not everybody's head is the same shape. And then the inventor says, well, first, but then the second time it is, right? So anyway, but the joke is that's no individuality in the army, except when I joined the army, and then a few years back, they started to adopt what the US Army is doing. And this US Army is a very successful army from a certain point of view, again, ignoring politics, but how it functions is a successful entity. And it allows individuals to make decisions. They do set goals. They don't necessarily set, I mean, there are moments when they do give you orders and then there's no questions asked, you have to. But most of the times they give you goals and targets to achieve. And then how you're going to achieve that is down to your team and your platoon or your individual, essentially, in some cases. And we were trying to do that. And then we were in the process of learning and adopting. And I tell you that it was a very difficult and painful situation for most of the military personnel in Hungary, because they were trained in the old system, they were working with the old system, and there were loads of training and coaching went on to this, not by me. I mean, I was on the the newbie in the whole thing. I was like, oh, exciting, and then this is how we do things. But for the people outside of their comfort zone, they were struggling, and in a way it helped me again to see that at first hand. I wasn't involved training them, I wasn't involved being the transformation. I mean, they didn't transform me and I didn't transform anyone. I was in a sense an outsider, a bystander, to see the higher level personnel to change their day-to-day life. And it was, I think, a valuable lesson, because I can do now similar things and I know what to expect from other people when they face these changes, or changes forced upon them. Like, there's a company I work, and then we're trying to do the transformation from a very waterfall system into more agile, and it's in a way fantastic to see that different cultures, different industries, but the reaction to change is almost universal. It doesn't really matter if it was a captain in the army or a chief of something in a company. They do react the same way, and then it helps you to prepare. You don't think it does. I mean, I'm going to tell you this. It's a very important observation, I think, from my life, that when you do something, it doesn't necessarily make sense, or you don't think it's going to help you in the future. Because it just doesn't, why would, training a 150-year-old military personnel to change, right? I mean, that doesn't have any bearing on your life, right? And then when you go home at the end of the day, you don't do anything with it. But 30 years later, it is 30 years later, it does help somehow. It comes like, oh, I've seen this before, and I now know what to expect and how to help the other person to actually get through the difficulties of the change. So again, connecting the dots doesn't really happen. I think Steve Jobs said this in one of the speeches he had on, I don't know which university he gave a speech, and he said that connecting the dots forward doesn't make sense. You can't. You have to look backwards, and then you can start connecting the dots. And I think it's a very, very true sentence from him, which I've seen many, many times in my life as well. So military does conflict, but it doesn't, luckily for me.
Well,
yeah. I
can clearly imagine why you lost some hair in that process, because one thing that you mentioned is it's this strict way, and I can only imagine how it was like breaking apart from the culture. I'll call it the culture of the military, that it's closer to the USSR, and then moving more towards one that was more the American way. So I can imagine people that were older than you in the military, how they struggled in there. And one thing that you touched, and it goes into this whole concept of learn, apply, repeat. sometimes we learn some things and we do not apply, and it feels like I've wasted my time just to have like a decade or more after. And you're like, ah, I'm glad that I did that. And
Yeah.
maybe I should have paid more attention to that one. One of the things that I think a lot about is like when I was studying biology, and I work with the computers nowadays. I work more with product. I'm like, why did I study biology? And a lot of things about data analysis that I did back there is like it's kicking off right now. It's like when I work with data scientists, and even like the whole concept of machine learning, it has a lot to do of how organisms think, like the way we think and how we do the models as well. So it comes from biology. We try to mimic a lot of stuff. And that there's only this way of looking back and then connecting the dots nowadays. I'm like, oh, and then I regret not paying attention to some of the classes because I don't know. When we are in our early 20s, we think we have all the time of the world, and which comes to a conclusion. To be honest, it was one question that I wanted to ask you early on, and I
Okay.
probably will let you go soon. And I wanted to ask this question: if you were able to go back in time and have a chat with your younger self, maybe early 20s, as I was saying, like which would be the tips that you would give to yourself, maybe to learn more or struggle less? What would you tell your back self?
Right. I think the most important thing I would tell myself at that age that wait for the moment when Bitcoin comes around and buy it all. Uh, because, yeah, but what would be the advice or what I would tell to myself? Beyond that, don't get freaked out. I'm you from the future. And yes, do time machines exist now? Is probably almost pointless. And this is a weird answer. That's what I would say, because I think our 20 years old selves, and you said probably these things as well, that are full of ideas about how the world works, and then that how we are the king of the hill, and then we know everything better than anybody else. And then for my 20 years old self, probably I would look like the old man who tries to tell him that nah, that's not how the world works, right? So he might ignore me completely. But I think I would tell myself to calm down slightly, and then be a bit more observant, a bit more beyond what I've done, because and maybe pay more attention to a few things. But I think slowing down would help a bit, because I was trying to get through things very quickly, and I was disappointed more than once about not being where I want to be. And then in some sense it might have driven me, but actually I think it did in some ways more harm than good to try to force outcomes, right? I think that's where I am probably trying to get there, that don't force the outcomes, so slow down, right? And then it's okay, it's going to happen. You've got the skills, you've got that, and then you've got everything to get there. So you don't have to force outcomes, because then the potential there too. Some of the failures I've done in my life are not necessarily ones which were needed to be made. I think if that makes sense, right? I mean, I like to think that mistakes we make, we can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
But there are mistakes we make which we pay much higher price than the actual benefit is, right? And then I think there's no point doing those mistakes, right? I mean, it's probably okay to accept that, if you do that, that's going to be a problem. So don't do that. I mean, not that I rob any bank or hijacked any airplanes or anything like that. It's not on my history or my red side of the chart. But then there's still a few things there which I think was stupid to do those things. And I think it all came down from the fact that I wanted to force my luck to get here faster, and I didn't get here faster.
And do you think did that you're rushing? Was that because you were comparing yourself to someone else?
Maybe comparing to someone else. But I think I'm going to say this, and this is going to be, very maybe controversial. But I think I was comparing myself to the successful myself I've seen I wanted to be, or I want to be, or I wanted to be. So I did not. Let's be clear. I mean, I didn't compare myself to Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, and then sitting on the top of the world and then having Windows installed on our machines, and why my systems are not installed on all machines. It's not that. But I had a vision of what I want to be, and I compared myself to that person that I thought that I will be, and then that was overinflated, and I did many things which wanted me to drive that direction. Which, to give you a very, very silly example, I spent weeks, and then this is really stupid, and just seriously, I spent weeks on designing my own house, that where I want to live in my life, and there is nothing in that that time is coming back, and then there is nothing beneficial for me from that wasted time, really, because that house I designed for myself was, that's just stupid, right? And architecturally impossible, and there are quite a few things there, and there's just no point, because I thought I've seen myself living in that place, and I wanted to have the plans ready when that eventuality happens. And the issue with that if that eventually would ever come, that I have that money to build that sort of house, I think I would still have the time to get a proper architect to work with that, because that's the point. I wasn't an architect. I never will be an architect, so I can't design the structure of that house. And I went to down that level, and I failed on that point myself, because if I'm that rich that I can build that house, I can potentially afford an architect, right? So I don't have to invent it when I'm 21-year-old and like, all right, so let me crack on, and then let's build that design and then put it on the wall, and that's what I want to live. That didn't, right? So that didn't happen. I know it's a silly one, but again, weeks went in that, if not months.
I wouldn't call that a waste of time. I think you're being hard on yourself again.
Again, maybe, but
it's just like, for me, it shows something that I really admire in you. Like, you set your mind into something and you dig, right? Keep on digging. It's written in there. You keep on digging. It's like, it was an area you had no clue about it. Yeah, you see, yeah. I was reading as I was saying, because you got interested in that, and for me, that is like a clear growth mindset. That it's something that attracted me. It's like, and you are my friend because this is one of the reasons as well. It's like, you don't feel stuck, and when we have conversations, it's not about like the exact same thing that we were talking like 8 years ago. Every time we learn from each other a bit more.
True.
And I'm like, and I didn't know this. I didn't know this is a story. I'm glad that I kept digging, and then I got this out of you, because you always say like, I'm not good at designing stuff, but you know what? I wasn't as well. I studied, and then nowadays I use it a lot. And maybe, I don't know, one day, I'm pretty sure your YouTube channel will keep growing, and maybe you're gonna have some time to hire an architect, and maybe those plans will come, maybe not like 90% of it. And the architect is like, oh, you're crazy, but I love it. I don't know.
Yeah. Story is that those designs are gone. I mean, if anything, you know what? I think I figured out what I would tell my 20 years old self, that hold on to those old computers you have, because today they again, it's money again, right? But I did throw away quite a lot of things, and in today's world, that would be actually very valuable. And then we're seeing these things with modern stuff, right? I mean, you go online and then buy an iPhone 12, it's almost cost the same as a 14, right? So because they're newish. Go for an iPhone 1 and you're gonna pay the same amount of money because now they are retro. But go for iPhone 7, it's like peanuts, right? You pay £6 and you get an iPhone 7 or something like that. I mean, right. And then people throw away these things today because today it's worthless. 20 years from now on, it won't be, right? But obviously, if everybody would keep it, then it would be. But you get my drift, right? That I did throw away quite a lot of things because, like, nobody needs that. And today I'm sitting here on eBay and then paying heavy money for getting something similar. Yep, to enjoyment to my wife.
Imi, I'd like to thank you so much again for having
Thank
this
you.
conversation. I think it was clear, whoever is listening to this, that you are a really intelligent person. I love how pragmatic you are. And I keep telling you this on several occasions. And for me, I'm super glad that you were the first guest that I have when I say about walking with giants, people that really influenced me, and you are one of them. I've told you several times, and I'm now saying that again officially here, so everyone knows. This is Imre, my friend, and thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me today.
Cool. Thanks for having me and wishing all the best with this podcast and the future of it as well. So, challenge ahead, beat me with the subscriber numbers.
Hopefully our following will grow as we keep putting energy into it. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.